back to Runway from the Rav, a Project Runway podcast. My name is Riley.
And I'm Maggie.
And today we'll be discussing All Star Season 6, Episode 4, Balls Out.
Gosh.
So this episode was our very first unconventional challenge for All Stars, which are usually our favorite episode. Because it's fun to watch the designers struggle with materials that aren't as easy to work with as fabric. Sometimes they're sheer or they're hard to work with. And this time I think they definitely had some hard to work with materials, but not the worst we've seen. Not the hardest materials we've ever seen. But basically Alyssa comes out on the runway and says, your challenge this week is to make a ball gown for a modern princess, and we're going to take you to a castle out in the countryside, and all the materials you need are in the castle. And, of course, all the designers, because just last season we went to Lyndhurst Castle, which is an actual castle. Mm-hmm. And they sketched there for inspiration. And so all the designers were like, oh, my God, what castle are we going to? Are we going to, rip tapestries off the wall? Are we going to, cut up a throne? Ooh. And so they bust them all the way out to this random island somewhere. And there is a bouncy castle in the middle of a grassy field, and it is filled to the brim with different kinds of balls. Yoga balls, playground balls, baseballs, cotton balls, hacky sacks, all kinds of balls. And basically they don't get to go to Mood. They got, I don't know how much time in the ball pit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably 5 minutes. They all got some trash bags, and it's basically just, you got to make a ball gown out of balls. That's the joke. Ha ha ha. Somehow an entire episode was that. So it was a 1-day challenge as well, which with unconventional is rough. No budget. You either grab balls or you no balls. And then, we just watched them get in there. It seemed a little awkward because it was just kind of whoever was walking slightly faster got to go in first. And then some random people were because you can't wear shoes in a bouncy castle, please. Yeah. Okay, this isn't madness. Okay? So people are taking their shoes off. And of course, the women have high heels, and everybody's because they're designers and because they're on TV, everybody's kind of dressed up. No one's in a jeans and t-shirt. They're in expensive jeans and t-shirts and fancy things they've made. So they're in these weird outfits, just grabbing balls into their trash bags. And some people are inside, some people are trying to bounce. Mm-hmm. And then some people, I think Amanda and at least Joshua I saw were just outside because a lot of the balls were flying out. So they were just scooping them up off the ground. And Amanda was I don't know if this is cheating, but she's I'm just shoving them in there.
I think that was the best strategy.
Yeah.
Because so many were being pushed out of the bouncy house. And it's in there, you're bouncing all over the place. It's probably kind of hard to walk because it's not stable ground. It's bouncy.
Yeah. Well, and some people were bouncing it, and then you still have quite a few designers, you know. Yeah. So I think we still have more than 10. So that's a ton of people to fit into a bouncy castle, which, if you didn't know, are designed for children. And usually a maximum of 6 kids at a time. And now you got
adults.
now you got I don't know, 10 or 12 full grown adults just grabbing balls. Mm-hmm. And obviously there was a large range in sizes. So, it's okay, you grab 2 yoga balls, depending on how you cut them up, you might have enough to make a garment. But if you're going after I think Joshua focused on baseballs and softballs. Obviously it's leather, but they're small. Or Char was going after basketballs, and then there were gold volleyballs, and 2 people were going after those. And then obviously Amanda Valentine was hacky sacks, all of them, because she has a very kind of 70s retro kind of vibe. And then other people were just grabbing random stuff just to be I don't know what I have in here, but I just got to get a lot. I think Ken got the most. Everybody else had
multiple bags.
Yeah, he had 3 bags, and I think it was Anthony was you can share with me, and Ken's just no. Do you have any other comments about the bouncy castle? Were you surprised? Did you think they were going to a real castle?
Well, I would have been if I had, we talked about it a little bit last week, the preview. So right. I think the preview gave it away, but I love the setup. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
To see him, be oh, yeah, a castle. And then... Psych.
And to be fair, the bouncy castle was themed like a normal castle. It had fake gray brick and little knights on it. So it wasn't a SpongeBob bouncy castle or a Hello Kitty bouncy castle. It was castle-y themed.
A castle-y themed castle.
Yes.
It was perfect.
Yes. Okay, so no mood, so that means no swatch. No. Ready to move on to the workroom then? Mm-hmm. So they all get back, and, they're throwing their balls everywhere. I'm sure that's hard to, put stuff on the table. Some people were, popping their balls immediately, but you might not want to pop it in that area or whatever. So I'm sure they're, rolling all over the place. Kimberly's going around and asking a couple people if she can take, their, pink and purpley ones, and I know at least Shar said yes. But everybody else seemed to be, there wasn't really any, hey, trade me all your baseballs and we'll give you this bumpy yoga ball.
Well, everybody was pretty low for the most part on supplies.
Right.
Very limited.
Yeah.
So if it was me, I probably wouldn't trade.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to trade for something. I think Shar just, gave her those other balls because she wasn't planning on using them. And obviously some things, like a basketball or a soccer ball or even a volleyball, has multiple layers in there. Mm-hmm. When you cut it open, it's got multiple layers of fabric. But, a yoga ball is just the rubbery plastic. That's it. That's all you get. So quite a few people struggled this week. Unconventional is always rough. And then when you have such an unconventional material as plastic play balls, you're like, oh, what? I gotta do what? And then obviously trying to have a cohesive color story and garment that's also you have enough of to make a ball gown. Granted, it's a modern day ball gown, and as we'll get to with Anne Fullenwider when she comes around, that doesn't necessarily have to mean Beauty and the Beast, big gold gown all the way to the ground with puffs and everything, but it's okay, but the joke is ball gown. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a single one of them made a ball gown. But anyway, no. Several people struggled. We watched Helen struggle quite a bit. And Helen, we'll get into much more about Helen in a minute. But she was struggling with the idea of working with these materials for sure. Candace struggled a lot. She had an idea right off the bat. And that's not a ball pun. None of these are puns. This is just straight up, okay? It's just straight balls, okay?
I mean, by the way, if you want to make this episode into a drinking game.
Go ahead. Yeah, if you want to take...
This would be a good one.
Yeah, take a shot every time one of us is forced to say the word ball or balls, go ahead. No, don't do that, you'll die. But yeah, we're going to say it a lot, because that's the material,
Yeah.
And that's the joke of this episode. That's the thing. It's not like most episodes we say fabric, but it's this was that was the point of this episode was balls. Do you get it? Balls. LOL, everybody. Millions of viewers tuning in to watch balls.
This season
has been a little rough, I think, especially for All Stars. The other person struggled, or I should say Candace, she had an idea, but her material kept ripping, so she kind of had to scrap that idea and go with something else, but she didn't scrap it fully like she probably should have. So she was struggling, and then Kimberly was also struggling initially. I think she eventually was just you know what? My model's going to be covered. It's clothes. She's good. Mm-hmm. But she was struggling initially. I was a little surprised we didn't hear more from Anthony. Anthony didn't seem to struggle much, other than his was ripping a bit. Mm-hmm. And we heard less from certain other folks this time. We heard a lot from Amanda. She got a lot of talking head moments. We heard a little more from Joshua than we have been. Less from Ken. Mm-hmm. More from Fabio. Quite a bit from Helen and Candace. And then more Kimberly than we've gotten. So in the workroom, I'm sure it was just madness. Hot glue guns, balls bouncing all over the place. The smell of hundreds of plastic and leather balls, probably not great. And then scissors poking them and stuff. So then Anne comes in to give her critiques. She goes around. I felt like she gave better critiques this week though. A little more helpful versus just critical, and a little less, if you want disco, go disco. It was a little more I want to see your sketch. I want to see your silhouette. I want to see your technique that you're doing. I want to make sure that you're changing it. It's not just a muslin dress, things like that. And then as she leaves, she's most of you didn't get enough material to make a ball gown. So just remember that it's a modern day princess. So her ball could be going to a rave, could be going to, and then she said, I don't know, something, a couple other things that just aren't as big. They might be going to a music festival or something like that. Instead of a big ball gown, so that, use your materials wisely. It doesn't have to be this huge piece, which I think everybody had already kind of been yep, couldn't make that if I wanted to. So, then we get our moment this episode, and really our first true piece of drama this season. So Helen is, sitting at her desk, working, and she starts loudly to anyone who will listen, just anyone, that she thinks using hot glue in an unconventional challenge or on Project Runway at all is a cop-out. Mm-hmm. So she wants to make her own textile by basically slicing up her balls and then sewing them into a textile. I couldn't quite tell if she was sewing them onto a muslin backing or if she was just sewing them together. I'm sure, knowing Helen, there was no muslin involved. It was just... So she was kind of like weaving them and then sewing them together into panels. But she said it multiple times. Mm-hmm. Look how cool I am, guys. I'm not using a glue gun. Hey, Mom, I'm not using a glue gun. It was just oh my God. And that she thought it was a cop-out and that, this is Project Runway. This isn't Project Michael's Arts and Crafts and blah, blah, blah. Well, other people in the workroom are using hot glue guns. And we have seen season after season people use hot glue guns because some materials, okay, they got rubber and plastic balls. I feel like last season or the season before they had chunks of metal. Yeah. Are you going to sew that, Helen?
Or candy.
Yeah, it's okay, maybe you could sew some a couple things, types of candy together, the packaging. But it's I remember the one where Amanda, I think on her season, it was also metal because she won just by using string and nuts and bolts and stuff. And it's okay, let me sew that together, Helen. And of course, other people could hear her because it's a big shared workroom and none of them get to leave. You're trapped in there for 10 hours. And so I think it was Ken and Anthony just start kind of joking about it. And I have some quotes at the end, so I won't spoil them here. Lots of quotes this week, I will be honest, at the end. But they are basically just being when she was kind of out of earshot, I'm using hot glue, I'm not a designer, blah, blah, blah. And their argument was basically that it's this is the design competition, not a sewing competition. So you need to sew well enough to get your idea across. But as we've seen with certain designers or designs that have won, Merlene, I'm thinking about, they might not have the best construction, but their design eye is there. So it's it's kind of a mix. But yeah, it's if you have to use hot glue, use it and make sure maybe the judges can't tell. But, so that was a bit of just really, Helen? And if she just said it once or just said it in her talking head, I personally don't want to use hot glue. I think it'll elevate my design to make my own textile. Okay, great. Good for you, Helen. But to say it 5 times in the workroom really loudly, it's what a crappy thing to do. Any other workroom moments for you? There wasn't too... There was the Helen moment, and then there was a few people being oh, I don't have enough stuff, or oh, I'm it's ripping, or oh, it's tearing. But most people seem to have an idea pretty quickly, and we're, just being I hope I can cover enough of the model to call it a garment.
Yeah, I felt this week's just overall was the most high stakes. There were more people than normal. Where the end of that first day, they're I don't have anything yet. Right. I have a lot of work to do in the morning. Yeah. Which, that's expected, though, on unconventional. Yeah.
When the models came in, half the people were I don't have anything to put on you, so I'm just going to put the colors on you and see if it looks good. And then I will mention we had one very obvious call out to the intermix style wall where at one point Joshua goes over there and gets a little denim booty. A lace-up, open-toe denim booty. Oh, I just shook. And him and his model, he's this just screams Joshua. And he's intermix, this is so great. And his model's yeah, I love it. It's just this reminds me of Fade's original season. They had this fancy fridge in their break room. And I remember there was once or twice that season, they were this fridge is so cool. Look at camera. And it's just I get you gotta have sponsorships. I think the intermix wall is more successful than the JCPenney's wall. It's just and maybe that's just how Joshua and his model are. Maybe they just ham it up that much. But it was just these are perfect. I love this intermix styling wall. Just, okay. Okay. But otherwise, the runway? Yeah. So our guest this week, our guest judge was Casey Musgraves, who is a country music singer, songwriter. I've never heard of her before. I don't listen to country music. Had you heard of her? Does she have a big song I'm missing out on?
Yes. Something about an arrow? Follow your arrow or something like that. Ask Kristen when you get back.
Yeah, we have
next week.
We have a coworker who likes country music. I'll have to ask her. Not familiar with country music myself, but, pretty young woman. Not an actress, so that's a good change. But also still just, random person number 5 as guest judge. I don't know who would be good. I think it would be nice, obviously, to have a designer who works with unconventional materials. Or if you're going to go for it, then just have, like, a softball player or a baseball player or a basketball player be like, wow, I never thought to use basketballs that way. Mm-hmm. So somehow that would be more insightful than most of the things these random people say. I have one quote from her. It's a classic. All right. So the runway itself, first up, and again, I wrote down what they used. So first up, we had Char, and she used soccer balls and basketballs, the inside lining, which is black. So she ended up putting down this little black dress. It kind of looks like leather or pleather with the inside of the balls, and it is got like a mini skirt to about the mid-thigh. It's sleeveless and goes kind of all the way up to the neck. It has an asymmetrical zipper down the front, and then it's got like a little peekaboo at the back, like right where the tramp stamp would be. What did we think of Char's?
This one was alright. I like this one. To me, looked transformed. I couldn't tell like what it really was. But like I don't know. It at the same time it did look kind of crafty to me. Like it's kind of messy, but maybe that was the effect she was going for, because, like, it kind of looked like ruffles and layers, and, like, that seemed intentional, but at the same time, I don't know. This one was just alright. I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't in my tops either. What do you think?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at it. I think it was the only one that was, like, a full black look. It certainly doesn't look like the inside lining of a ball to me, but because of the small sizing that you can get, because you have to, like, cut the little panels out of the balls, and then, they're, like, kind of crinkled up, it doesn't look necessarily fully like leather, which is why I'm like, okay, it looks more like leather, or it looks more like she, like, ruffled up, like, paper or something. But it doesn't look bad, and I think the fit to the model is pretty decent. The skirt's a little wonky, but it's not too bad. But she was safe. Next up, we had Amanda, and Amanda primarily used beach balls and hacky sacks. And she ended up putting down, I think she had the longest dress.
Yeah.
So this one went to right at the model's ankle. It is all colors. It's green, mostly. And then on the front, it also has blue and yellow, and then it has, like, some pink, yellow, green, and blue, like, bumps, because a lot of the balls were, like, textured, I guess, to make them, like, easier to catch, I don't know. And it's a sleeveless, kind of like maxi dress, kind of. It has a really odd cutout above the chest that's, like, a square that goes slightly too low. And then it's green up there with a bunch of, like, detailing at the shoulder. And then it comes down and there's, like, blue cutouts over, like, her, like, obliques, and then a green line down the front that turns into a yellow line. There's a really high asymmetrical, like, cutout over one leg, the right leg, like, way up on the thigh. And then the back also has a cutout, like a peekaboo kind of cutout at the top, but it's bigger. And then she kind of used this chevron pattern and arrows down the back in green, orange, and pink. And then the bottom's just like these weird, like, swirls. And then on the back, around the cutout, is hacky sacks. How long am I talking about this dress? Like 10 dang minutes. Is like hacky sack fabric. What do you think?
Well, this was very Amanda. I could tell immediately that it was hers. Like, I mean that as if, like, I hadn't been watching this whole time and had no idea.
Right.
But, yeah, I thought there were some definite fit issues. This thing is crazy busy. There's so much going on. And, I don't know. I didn't really care for the front very much. Like, some of the shapes she created with, like, those color blocks, like, it's just, I don't know. It just looks strange and not very flattering to me. The back is better, but the back is just... It's insane. There's a lot happening back there. What do you think?
Now, this is a term Zach Posen prefers to use, and he is not on All Stars, not yet. This is wackadoo to me. I am not super into the retro kind of throwbacks, at least not to the 70s, or like the psychedelic part of like the 60s and 70s. That's not really my aesthetic. The front to this is, I don't understand it. The best way for me to describe this dress is when you take like a fruit roll up that's like multicolored and you wrap it around like your finger to eat, like if you eat it that way, and then you kind of like start eating it and like pull it out and then you put it on a woman's body. That's what this is. She was chosen for teak in the bottom. Next up we had Anthony, and he used playground balls, which is so generic of a term.
Yeah.
What kind of balls did they use on a playground? I don't know. Apparently rainbow balls that look like they have a slight like peachy texture. It's hard to tell, obviously, from like watching on TV, but they seem to have, they were like kind of matte-ish or like satin. They didn't look shiny.
Yeah. It wasn't a texture like a kickball though, was it? Like where it's...
It didn't look like it had like an ingrained pattern into it. Yeah, like a dodgeball or something. Hard to say, but anyway, he put down a little strapless dress. And he used half of the rainbow balls as like blue, green, and yellow, and he used that. It's a ruched little dress, very short, like just above the upper thigh. And then at the skirt, he used the pink and orange and like purple portions, and kind of made this like slightly exaggerated over the butt. And then it kind of came around the front in kind of an interesting pattern. What did we think of Anthony's?
Well, just overall comment was I thought the rainbow palette that they were given was gonna be a big challenge. To me, this one, not my favorite, but as one of the like true rainbow dresses, I think this one might have been the most successful for me, but I still wouldn't say it's successful. In these pictures it looks really like flat, but when I was watching it last night, I feel like it was a bit more voluminous, wasn't it? Or am I just imagining
the
that?
back, I think, was, and it had a lot of texture to the front because of the different like petals, kind of.
Yeah, like
more dimension. Yeah,
it looked like he shaped it very intentionally, and I don't know, did the best he could with it. But I don't know. I bet these balls were really hard to work with. Drink. That was the way I'm saying that.
When Anthony and Candace both went for like the rainbow colored balls, I was just like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with that? I think rainbows are beautiful, obviously, and are totally cool, and like a prism and all that stuff is cool. But I think it's hard to take like a legitimate rainbow and make it like super fashionable. Yeah. Because there's just so many colors, and colors kind of clash and everything. So to me, this, I want to like it. I think I'd like it more if it didn't have one of the colors. So, and he probably just didn't have enough to do it all in like either just the blue, green, and yellow, or the red, or pink, or I'm sorry, the orange, pink, purple. I like the front of this, but the back skirt is a little diaper butt to me. It could just be the picture. I remember liking it more when it's walking, but those memories are fleeting and just a glimpse. Mm-hmm. So staring at it here, it kind of looks like a diaper butt in the skirt situation. But I don't dislike it necessarily, but he was safe. Next up we had Kimberly, and she used beach balls. And her garment is again a little strapless. I think this is like kind of separates, so it has a little top that's just tied around in the back, and then has kind of a little voluminous skirt to about the mid-thigh. Hers had a lot of like fringe, kind of like she cut the beach balls into strips. It's pink, purple, and white. So it had a little movement as it was walking down, because those little kind of flaps would flap in the breeze gracefully. And then the top is very tight to the body. And again, it was strapless. What did we think of Kimberly's?
This one, it was alright. I think this was one of my top favorites of this week. I like that, she put some thought into the colors that she chose. I'm not huge on fringe, and it did kind of make it look, I don't know, a little bit like a piñata. But it was kind of fun, like, for this challenge. I don't know. And it did have some good movement on the runway. I'm really glad she got rid of the cotton ball neck piece she had started with
originally to her bodice, the top of it went up and around the model's neck, and she had just glued white cotton balls onto the muslin. Because the cotton balls were in the bouncy house, but it's like, it looks like cotton balls. Like, and I think Joshua was like, I think those were in there as a trick. Like, whoever uses those, we got you. But she ended up taking off once she put it on her model.
I just remember that line too. Oh my gosh. That made me laugh when I watched it.
Joshua got a couple moments this week because we haven't heard much of him. He seems like a character, but this week we got a little bit.
Yeah. Anyways, for this, I liked it. What do you think?
I like the skirt a lot better than I like the bodice top. That to me looks more like a swimsuit, and it's almost too tight on the model. It's not really very flattering. I like the skirt quite a bit, and obviously you don't have a lot of material or a lot of time, but I wish the top was more resolved. I didn't like this as much as the judges did, though, to be honest. Just because the skirt kind of flapped a bit, they were like, movement, oh, it's amazing. I'm like, okay, it's like a bit of a flap. It's not that big of a deal, but she was chosen for critiquing the top. Next up, we had Helen, and like I said earlier, Helen made her own textile, and she used beach balls, and she has a color story here of light blue, dark blue, yellow, and white. And it's real shiny. Hers is the shiniest. And she basically made a little sheath dress, strapless, zip up the back with a bit of a little cut in the back as well, like a little slit. Very form-fitting to the model. The skirt is shinier than the top, and she, with her textile, she had these little, graphic, little bars. So it's mostly blue, and then every once in a while there's these kind of geometric lines of yellow and white. What did we think of Helen's?
This one, I do like it. This one doesn't read super, this one doesn't make me think of ball gown, which I don't know how fair that is to say, because really, probably none of them make me think of ball gown.
Not a traditional ball gown, yeah.
But, I don't know, when I think ball gown, I usually don't think of, a tighter silhouette like this. But, I don't know. I like this one. I like the color palette that she chose, you could kind of tell, what that material had been before, or at least, make a guess as to what it was. But at the same time, I feel like it was transformed. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell it was plastic or PVC or something, but I would never guess that those were beach balls. I agree, I feel like even a modern-day ball gown, it's still meant to be danced in. That's what balls were. They were big dances. So a really tight dress, and this went to just below the knee, so it's kind of like a secretary skirt with, a top sewn on. So, to me, it's a little restrictive, and I want to like the the graphic elements of it, with the color blocking. But, and I have a quote later on of why I don't like it because of the specific colors chosen. And I feel like it's too many of the colors. And it's probably just a material thing. Mm-hmm. But it does fit the model well, I'll give it that. It just doesn't, I don't know. It's not quite enough. It's a little meh. But she's chosen for taking the bottom. Next up we had Edmund, and he used volleyballs. And he put down this gold thing. Let me get into this. So again, this is a mini dress because they didn't have a lot of materials. Everybody's making mini dresses for the most part. This one has shoulder pads, literally. It's gold, and it's he used the natural kind of curvature of the volleyballs and kept it that way. So it's got this kind of 3D, it kind of looks like, if you've ever done stained glass, and I'm sure most of you have, when you solder in between, it kind of bubbles up into this kind of curved line. And that's what it looks like here, that it's got kind of a texture to it. And it kind of has these little crisscrossy lines. It's got two really bigger parts over her breasts, and then the rest is just these kind of crisscrossing lines. And then at the skirt, it's more crisscrossing lines, and then underneath that you can see the muslin in just a little kind of bandage skirt around her. And then she has shoulder pads. What did we think of Edmund's?
This one, I think this is Edmund's best so far. I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool. it looks kind of fancy because it's got the gold in there. And so, like, to me, that kind of elevated it and made it look more like, yeah, it's like an evening, like a special event kind of dress. And I don't know, I like that he used the, like, shape of the volleyball stuff, like, that material, like, to his advantage. Like, I don't know. It's a bizarre dress, but I didn't hate it. What do you think?
The fact that you can see muslin through this, disqualified.
Yeah.
I wish he had, knowing that someone else who used these exact same balls was able to get quite a bit of black fabric as well. I wish he would have lined the skirt with black. Yeah. Or some other different color from the ball. Probably like white or red. Something that goes okay with gold. To me, this is a little too on the nose of, like, Wonder Woman chic with the big shoulder pads.
Yeah.
I want to like the, like, crisscross, like, three-dimensional kind of thing. It's just, it looks a little, and I know it isn't heavy, but it looks a little, like, heavier, like, overwrought. It's a little too much. And then he paired it with these, like, gladiator stiletto heels that wrap around her calf all the way up to the knee. So it's just, like, it looks costumey to me. It looks like a gladiator costume. Yeah. Only she gonna lose. Because all her vital organs fresh for the stabbing.
She's covered in volleyballs.
Yeah. Well, and like her sides aren't covered, her neck isn't covered. She's gonna bleed out. But anyway, he was safe. Next up, we had Stanley, and Stanley used beach balls. And Stanley put down is a dream in orange, and sunshine yellow. So I believe this is separates as well. It's kind of hard to tell because they do some interesting, like, cutouts at the back where I'm just, I don't know all the dress styles. But this is basically a sleeveless all the way up to the neck, yellow and orange kind of look. Kind of looks like just a little top, and then there's a skirt underneath that has these kind of big scallops. I think Joshua said like an old roof, or you can also think fish scales. Mm-hmm. And a certain type of fish with orange fish scales. I don't know, maybe a goldfish, maybe a koi, so basically a carp. But it's orange and yellow, and then at the very bottom there's like a darker orange or kind of red in that scallop shape. And it goes just past the knee, so this is one of the longer ones as well. What did we think of Stanley's?
All I see is goldfish. That's it.
Before I said it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Moving on.
Same. I see like goldfish or like a koi fish. This, I feel like that this scale or like scallop shape we saw last season as well, in their unconventional challenge. I feel like that's what Amy did with her look, was kind of use that kind of rounded shape to make a scale look. So to me it's just like, okay, and his was entirely hot glued to muslin. I know for some folks out there, Ellen, that's going to be a big issue, but you can't see the muslin here. At least I can't in these pictures, and I don't remember it. And it had some movement with the scales, but yeah, it looks like a goldfish, and no one said it. Like, as I'm watching the episode, I'm like, someone's going to say it. Like, someone's got to say it. Like, I'm not crazy here, right? Like, nope, no one said it. And he was just critiquing the top.
Yeah. Get a load of that.
Next up we had Joshua, and he used softballs and baseballs. And he ended up putting down, again, a little mini dress. This one, he did not paint. None of them, like, painted or altered anything, really.
No, I wonder, like, was that not allowed?
But they always have paint. Maybe it was just, like, a timing thing or whatever. And, like, with plastic, good luck painting that, like, and getting it to, like, stay and not peel off or whatever. But he had, like, leather baseballs and softballs. So it's neon yellow, white, and a little bit of red and black. And he made a little mini dress that is very form-fitting. Has a little peekaboo cutout on the front right about like where her cleavage would be, little peekaboos on the side, and then it's basically like a halter top in the back, and the whole back is exposed, and then it has that little mini skirt that's slightly asymmetrical at the bottom. But it's basically he just cut open a softball and laid out that kind of, it's like, almost like a figure 8 shape, or maybe a maxi pad shape. More feminine hygiene products here. And then he just sewed them together. Mm-hmm. What did we think of Joshua's?
This one, I don't know. I feel like I should hate it, but I don't. What does that say about me? I don't know.
You love sports.
Oh yes, I do. I do. Yeah, big sports fan. Because I love balls. But
Don't we all?
But I don't know. I didn't like that you could tell exactly what it was. Like, you know, a softball is that very distinct, like, highlighter, like, neon yellow color. And then baseballs, you know, are typically white with the red laces. Like, they're super recognizable. And, like, even the way that he used it, like, he didn't, you know, he just used the shape that they were. Rather than, like, cutting it up and piecing it however. But, like, I don't know. It had, like, a strange graphic quality to me, and I kind of liked it. I liked it. It made kind of a cool hemline, like, sort of like a wavy edge. I don't know. What'd you think? Let's move on.
I feel the same way about this as I did with Joshua's look for the post-apocalyptic challenge, where it was like, okay, use a bullseye. It's a little on the nose, but as a whole garment, it looked more elevated. And I feel that same way here. Like, I could totally see, like, some, like, up-and-coming, like singer wear this to an event or something like that. Like, maybe not, like, a huge red carpet event, but maybe, like, a smaller one. And the way her hair is styled into, like, 3, like, cornrow kind of braids, it just makes it seem kind of edgy. And then she's got, like, big hoop earrings and those amazing peep toe lace-up denim booties. Where I don't know, it feels kind of young and fresh. I wish he had done something more with the shape. The more you look at it, the more you just see like liners or pads or something like that. But what he did with the skirt, I think, is better than the top. And I think he was very clever to have the whole back cutaway. That's very youthful, and it's a great way to save material.
Yeah.
But I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. I should have, but I didn't. He was safe. Next up, we had Candace, and she used yoga balls and playground balls. Well, I should say she used yoga ball and playground balls. So she used the same rainbow balls as Anthony did. So on the top here, it's a little dress. On the top, it's those rainbow balls. On the front, it's the orange, purple, and pink ones. It's one shoulder kind of goes up and over the side. It's got this little like poof bit on the bottom that she kind of wanted it to be a petal, but it kind of just sits there, right, hangs off the waist. And then the back has like the green and blue and yellow kind of over one shoulder and like a strap. And then the entire skirt is just one giant yellow deflated yoga ball that she just kind of cinched up and hitched up on one side, and it cuts to just above the knee. What did we think of Candace?
This was really, really not her best. Like, I didn't really like any part of it, so I'll just leave it at that.
This looks like a deflated yoga ball, and it just... I think she should have just ditched her, like, pedal idea right away, because I could tell from her sketch, I'm like, you're not going to be able to make that out of like plastic rubber balls. Like, you're just not. And I think she struggled with it, and by the time she didn't have time for anything else, and I don't think she got a bunch of other colors or anything like that. And yeah, this is just, it looks sad, and it is sad, and she was trouser fatigue in the bottom. Next up, we had Fabio, and he also used the golden volleyballs, and so he put down a little mini dress as well. This one halter neck again, but it goes all the way up to the neck. Comes down sleeveless, and it's kind of pieced together. He cut the volleyball into strips, so it's not like Edmund's that kept the 3-dimension. He turned it more into kind of these like little geometric shapes, but it's all gold, so it all blends together. And then the bottom is kind of like this fringe made of the volleyball cut up, and then there's a black zipper all the way up the back, and the back is like a racer back kind of style. And then there's a little bits of black that kind of peek through in certain areas to break up the gold. What did we think of Fabio's?
This one I liked. I think the only part I didn't really care for was I didn't really like the fringy bits on the bottom. To me, like, I don't know if that was like something that was unavoidable, or if that was, like, a design choice that he made.
Well, we saw him, like, he originally was going to make it a longer dress, but then he had to, and it's all on top of muslin. Then he had to cut it, and I think there was a little muslin left, so he just decided to do this treatment. I don't think he had to do it, but he decided to do it to hide that muslin.
I don't know. I mean, it's not terrible, but to me, it brings it down a little bit. What do you think?
I like this one better than Edmund's. It feels very Wonder Woman to me, and I'm not mad at it. I don't mind the bottom. To me, it reminds me of like a Roman kind of like armor, like skirt thing, which again, it's very Wonder Woman, so I don't dislike that. Some of the black peekaboos, there's one like that's literally like right over her uterus. That's kind of just. It's the biggest one, so that just seems kind of out of like place. And then I don't like the black zipper up the back. I get he didn't have a ton of options there, but I wish he would have either overlaid some gold to make like this kind of geometric pattern going down the back or something. But I always hate like a big bold zipper. Like to me, zippers are not a fashion statement unless it's like Shars. That was a fashion statement if you put it on the front and it's kind of asymmetrical or there's something interesting there. But just like literally the way you get into the garment up the straight middle of the back, that's not unique. Mm-hmm. But I liked this quite a bit, and he was chosen for Teak in the top. Next up we had Ken, and he used yoga balls and basketballs, and he put down this little blue dress. So it's also kind of a halter top, but in the back it's crossed over, so like the neck, like the top of the neck then crosses over and becomes a belt. And then it's a blue skirt, and then there's like a little bit of like, he made like a flower or something on the hip, and then it goes to about just past like mid-thigh, and then there's quite a big cut or like little slit in the back. What did we think of Ken's?
This one, it was alright. This one, I got the same kind of vibe from Helen where, like, yeah, it looks very, very plasticky because, you know, it's shiny and it's plastic. Plastic / rubber, whatever. But, I don't know. I mean, this was one of the ones that, like, I felt like it actually had some cool kind of, like, design details. Like, he actually made, like, a cross strap back and, like, it has, like, a neckline. I don't know. Some of the others, it was just, like, wrapping things where they could. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to explain. So, this one, it was alright. It wasn't my personal favorite, but it was fine. What do you think?
I thought this was really boring, and if you're, like, if the judges are going to call out Helen's for being boring, at least Helen's has, like, patterns to it, and a slightly more interesting cut on the front. This one is kind of boring. I like the back detail. And I like the top of the front. I don't like the flower thing, and I don't like the bottom. This one looks like he was in the challenge from last season where they had to make stuff out like trash bags. Because to me, these don't look like, at least from the picture, it doesn't look like a ball. It looks like a trash bag that's like kind of crinkled up. Not necessarily in a bad way, it's just boring. It's just a boring dress, and he was safe. And then last up we had Merlene, and she used beach balls. And she put down, again, one of the slightly longer ones. So the base of this is like yellow dress, sleeveless, but on the right like shoulder has like slightly asymmetrical longer on that shoulder. And then close your eyes and imagine this, folks. 4 different colors of bubble wrap just glued to a woman in various shapes. So it's predominantly yellow at the top and then right at the bottom, and then there's green, blue, and pink. Now, it's like this textured, like, ball, but from afar, it looks like she spray painted bubble wrap and just kind of, like, you know, stuck it up there. And on the back, it's purple. The back has a cutaway, and then the purple has, like, a bit of a slit in the back, and this goes to the knee in the back. And then in the front, there's, like, a yellow piece that hangs slightly lower than the knee. What did we think of Merlene's?
This one was, to me, also Candace level of bad. Like, it was just, to me, this is terrible. Like, it's just a bunch of stuff, like, tacked together. I hated it. Moving on.
It looks like she was wearing a yellow dress, someone spilled glue on her, and then a wind blew by, and she got covered in plastic wrap, and then, like, a couple people who were, like, tagging, like, the underside of a bridge with their spray paint, like, hit her up. Mm-hmm. It just looks so all over the place. Not a fan. She was safe, though. So that leaves us with Amanda, Helen, and Candace in the bottom, and Kimberly, Stanley, and Fabio in the top. However, before I get to the judging, we gotta get into the second half of Helen. So while they're standing there on the runway and they all get to say their little piece about like why they made what they did and whatever, Helen says right up there on stage when everybody else is up there and her model's right there, she's like, I didn't want to cop out and use a glue gun, so all of mine is sewn together. And the judges already said they didn't like it. They said it was boring. They said that it wasn't elevated and everything. And she's like, well, I just wanted, for my own purposes, I couldn't add any other colors in here. I didn't want it to look like a clown's dress, so I'm not gonna add like purple and pink and green. And I didn't want to use a glue gun and just glue stuff onto muslin. And she's like, that's not something I want to do. And someone, I couldn't tell if it was Stanley or Fabio. Could you tell? Was just saying like shade. Like
no,
I couldn't tell who it was because they didn't zoom out enough to see who was saying it, and I don't know their voices.
Isaac.
No, I think it was someone on the thing because Isaac said, yeah, shade.
Oh, so okay.
Yeah. But Isaac Mizrahi loves drama in a way that most of the other judges don't. And he immediately leans forward and he's like, oh shade. And so, obviously, sometimes people on the runway say things they don't mean, or they say things that are unnecessarily rude or whatever. But Helen had already started this episode for hours the previous day, talking about what she thought about people who use glue guns and whatever, and using all these random colors and things. And then on the runway, surrounded by other people's looks that use those techniques, that scored higher than her. She's just like, rah, 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 and this is my... And it's like, okay, and then... it's always awkward because the judges are just sitting there like, we don't want, like, obviously Isaac's a little interested in the drama. Like, you think Georgina Chapman gives a crap about anybody else's business? No. Alyssa Milano's just sitting there like, Heidi Klum would have been like, ooh, like, she loves a little drama. And then obviously the poor guest judges are always like, what am I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. So they leave, and when they get to the back room, obviously, Stanley, Fabio, and Helen start to get into it a little bit where they're just like, it's like, I think it was mostly Fabio saying like, it's really rude for you to stand up there and say you wouldn't use those colors because it'd be a clown dress when you're standing next to people who, like Amanda and Stanley, who use those looks and use those colors because that's the materials they had. She's like, well, I didn't mean it like that, and I would never say that. Why would I say things like that? And it's like, and little Anthony's like tucked back up in the pillows on the couch. He's like, because you do it all the time. Like, it's like, and then she like storms out of the room crying. She's like, I would never do that. I would never say that, even though she literally just said it 2 minutes ago. And obviously, what other meaning could she have? Like, than the things she was looking at. And then Anthony's just like, it's just Helen. Like, it's just Helen being Helen. So pretty funny. So she like goes off to another room to like cry about how she hurt other people's feelings. Yeah. While the entire room of people she just offended are sitting there like, what the? And then they walk back out to the runway to get the final judging, and Helen's late. Mm-hmm. And they're all just standing there, and Isaac's like, where's Helen? And Fabio's just like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And Isaac's like, is it the drama backstage? And Fabio said, maybe, like slightly. And then out she comes, and she just stands there, and they just begin again. So what the hell? I don't even know. So we always do the top first. So they were basically, Kimberly, you're safe. Mm-hmm. And then it was between Stanley and Fabio, and it turned out Stanley was the winner. Do we agree with that?
No.
Who do you think should have won?
Jesus. In this case, either Fabio or Kimberly. Mm-hmm. Either. Both of them were better than the goldfish dress. I don't know. I just didn't see it. I guess my tastes. It's just, I can't get to that level.
It was too goldfishy for me.
Yeah.
It was literally a goldfish. I think Fabio should have won of those three. I think his was really strong.
I agree.
It looked more elevated. But Stanley was the winner. So that left us to the bottom, which again is Amanda, Helen, and Candace.
It's amazing to me that Merlene was not bottom.
Same. To be honest, I would not have put Helen in the bottom myself. I think hers was just safe. Yeah. And I probably would have either put Merlene there or maybe like Ken's in place of it, but that's not how it went down. They were immediately like, Amanda, you're safe. So it was between Helen and Candace, and the only reason Helen was in the bottom was because of the drama, and I think the producers wanted her to squirm a little bit to be like, well, you took the high road and look at you. Yeah. So sometimes it's the design and not the technique. Because literally Stanley, who hot glued everything, won. Yeah. So, not that I agree with it, but, like, obviously the judges don't care if you hot glued it or use, like, chewing gum to stick it together, as long as they like the design. And then there's a really tense moment where it's like, well, Helen's obviously unprofessional and immature to, like, storm off and be late and everything, but then Candace's was just terrible. So I'm just sitting there, like, chewing off all my fingernails, you know, and not really, I don't do that, but,
Riley has the best nails.
Yeah.
She would never.
Currently, they are black with a hollow top coat, so I'm in love. Anyway, I love Candace, though, so I'm just like, no, this is the second week in a row where I'm like, Candace made a bad look, but please, any reason for her. But it turns out Candace went home, and Helen is safe. Do we agree with that?
I mean, unfortunately, yes. Hers was probably
terrible.
the worst this week.
Yep.
Hers or Merlene. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Candace's was slightly weaker than Merlene's, and then obviously they liked Merlene's enough to have it be safe.
Yeah.
If I had to choose, I'd probably send Merlene home over Candace, but I like both of their stuff. I just like Candace's personality a little bit more, and I just love her vibe. Like, she's, like, kind of dark and witchy, but also super sophisticated. And then I'm just like, I want to be you. I'm not cool enough or, like, fancy enough to be... I don't think anyone will ever describe me in my entire life as sophisticated. Maybe, like, at certain times of the year I can get witchy. Or dark, definitely, but I don't think I'll ever get sophisticated.
Oh my God.
I'll learn to live with it. Do you have anything else to say about the runway or the judging or anything?
No. After the last 2 weeks, I have nothing left. I have nothing. I have already spent all of my emotions on this show. First Kelly, and then last week, I didn't agree at all. I was outraged over Ari and Melissa. Yeah. And I wasn't expecting that out of myself. But there it was. And this week I'm like, well, you've already done it to me twice. I know you're going to send the next one home. So, yeah. And it did. It was not a surprise.
Yep. And I can't disagree this week, to be honest. That was worse. Last week I felt all four were pretty weak. And there were some other weak ones too. But this week, yeah, I can't even deny. So we'll just get to the quotes of the week. I've got quite a few.
Yeah.
So first up, Fabio, very early on in the episode, said, "How many times are we going to say balls today?" And you know what, Fabio? Go back, re-listen to this podcast, count them all, and tweet it to us. At RavRunway. I'll wait. But yeah, because everybody's just like, balls, we got so balls. Oh, there's balls over here. And Fabio's just like, how many times? Pretty funny. Then Candace, who is struggling to make things, but finally kind of settled on an idea. She's like, I could hot glue the hell out of a gown. Now, the truth is she didn't. But I really liked that phrase, especially with the whole Helen thing, where it's like, people have made amazing things, whether it's a garment or like some technology or some other invention or even just some other great thing out of nothing. Like, if you're truly skilled, like, you don't need like the best art supply, like paint, to be someone amazing. Like, the best painters could use like coffee and make art. They could use dirt and make art. So it's just like, you just have to have the skill and the passion.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to have the materials. I've seen amazing art made with like rose art crayons, and it's just like, oh, I couldn't make that with like $80 paint. So good, cool, I feel great. So the same thing with materials. Like, if just because you don't have like $1,000 fabric from Milan or even from Mood, it's like, if you can't design, you can't design. And then Helen awkwardly was like walking around because she was really struggling at the beginning. She really didn't know how she was going to work with the materials, and she didn't want to use hot glue, and she'd already said she didn't want to use the hot glue, so she kind of put herself in a corner, and she was like, balls got me like a mess. I just was like, what an interesting phrase to come from Helen. Like, next up we had Ken, who after Helen made all her comments about hot glue, was joking with Anthony and a few others, and he's like, my integrity is gone. I had to use hot glue. Like, he was obviously joking, but it was just so funny because like Anthony and Ken, who've obviously been on the show before and everything, are just like, oh, my integrity as a designer's gone. Like, and then Anthony's like, yeah, it's design competition. So it was just funny to see that they weren't like taking it too seriously at that time. At the runway level, then everybody was like, whoa, you don't say things like that. Like, it's one thing for you to say, for my personalness, I wanted to do this, but then to throw other people, that's pretty shitty. Then we had Amanda talking to Candace saying, look at you with all this color. What's going on? And I like to think my friends would do that for me. So, like, Candace, obviously, this season has used more, like, neutrals and stuff like that. Or on her previous season, she always used, like, black and red. And she's kind of known for that even now in her looks. And as someone who wears black literally every single day of my life, like, I've had, like, family members, but I have to, like, believe that if I wore, like, a rainbow outfit, like, someone would be like, are you okay? Like, have you been possessed by a demon or, like, an alien of some kind? Like, what's going on? And it was just funny because Amanda and Candace, to me, seem like a similar, I don't know if they're similar in age, but they seem like a similar level of, like, maturity compared to some of the other contestants, so I just kind of liked seeing that bonding. Then Isaac talking to Candace about her look, he said, I'm not mad at you, I'm mad at the dress. Which I like when the judges differentiate that, because sometimes I feel like early in the competitions especially, they can be like, oh, this person like just doesn't know how to sew. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
They probably just struggle with this one challenge. Next up, we had Casey, our guest judge, talking to Helen about Helen's dress, saying, the color scheme reminds me of Best Buy.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Which is true, and before she said that, I thought the same thing with the shades of blue and then the yellow. I definitely, and as someone who's recently been buying things at Best Buy, I was like, yep, I can see it. But it's just like, that was like the most insightful thing Casey had to say.
Yeah.
Mostly she just tagged on what other people said, or she was like, if I saw that at a party, I'd want to meet that girl. And it's like, okay. Next up, we had Georgina talking to Helen. About Helen, I should say, when they were like doing their judging and the folks aren't on the stage. And Georgina was like, don't come on a competition and get mad when you're judged. Which is true. You can disagree with the judge's final decision, but on the stage, don't argue. You're not going to do any good. Like, we've had plenty of people on Project Runway or other competition shows where it's like they try to argue with the judges. Like, you can explain your point, and then at the end of the day, they decide. Mm-hmm. But, like, arguing up there and, like, talking over them, like, you came on here to be judged and win some money. Okay? So just go home. Then we had Alyssa talking about the Helen drama when she wasn't out there. Isaac like looked to Alyssa and was like, what's going on? She's like, I don't know, I'm just the judge. Which I like that Alyssa Milano is above the drama, because Heidi would have like sent Tim or herself would have like run back there and be like, Helen, where's Helen? And they would have like a camera crew like running through. But Alyssa Milano was just like, I'm just the host. Like, I'm gonna sit in my chair. I'm gonna have someone bring me a bottle of water. Like, I don't care about Helen. Like. And then my last quote this week is Candace as she was leaving. She actually had a couple quotes that were good. And her first one was like, this is actually a good challenge to go out on, because all it proves is that I can't make a good garment out of plastic balls. And it's like, that's true. Mm-hmm. Like, at least you're not going out on like the cocktail dress challenge or whatever. Like, okay, you went out on a conventional challenge and no one's ever going to be like, hi, I really need a dress for like the Oscars. Could you make it out of these like 4 yoga balls? No. Yeah. And then she also said, when you know what you want to do for your whole life, this is just another page. And I think that's really insightful. I really like to get like people's closing kind of quotes where she's like, she knows she wants to be a designer forever, and just because she didn't win this competition or whatever, she still had a good time. And this is just another page. And she's still, if you follow her on stuff, she's still making collections and designs. So that's really cool. Mm-hmm. I didn't get a next week preview. I just got like later this season, and it was a bunch of moments of them like going to the Smithsonian or going to like some type of musical place because they have like a giant guitar in the air. A couple little like throwaway quotes of people talking about. There was no like next episode. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, do you have any final thoughts for this episode?
No, not really. I'm sad to see Candace go. Yeah. But yeah, like we said this week, it made sense, but my heart's already shattered, so it didn't hurt that much, I guess.
It's just whittling away a lot of like the crowd favorites and like who's gonna be left.
I know, our top 3 predictions are about done.
Yeah, I think I got like one left, and then my like the maybe, like the throwaway that is still there. But I think a lot of people are feeling a little underwhelmed with this season. Just some of the challenges and some of the looks are just, they don't feel super inspired. It's like, so far you've had to make looks inspired by wine, inspired by balls, inspired by pea soup. It's just kind of like, and one of the previews for future in the seasons, Betty Boop, like. What year is it that we're talking about Betty Boop? Like, What even? But anyway, I think that's all for us for this episode. I want to announce to you all that we are now on Google Play. So for Android users, you now have an easier way to find us. We're also on Pocket Casts. So if you use Pocket Casts, you can find us. We're also on our lovely home of Podiant, Apple Podcasts or iTunes. We're on WordPress and YouTube. So go out there, find us, watch us, share us, please, rate us, review, leave us a comment, count how many times I said balls. Tweet that to me, please, at RavRunway. We're also on Instagram, at RavRunway. No, you don't have. That would be so tedious. And I wouldn't know if you were right anyway. So just guess it.
We'll just accept it.
Yeah, I'll take it as gospel. But otherwise, I think that's it for us this week, and we'll see you guys next week.